In the year of 1918, God sent a mighty disease, killing many a thousand on the land and on the sea. We've been told God has warned us, Jesus is coming soon. We've been told God has warned us, Jesus is coming soon. God is born in the nation, warning us in every way. I turn away from the evil, seek the Lord and pray. We've been told God has warned us, Jesus is coming soon. We've been told.
Ooh, that was one of your picks. Kaiser and Mansfield, Jesus is coming soon.
Yeah. You didn't play it all.
No, well, I wasn't sure exactly when they come in. We could still bring her back if you want.
No, that's fine. Are we live?
Yeah, we're live now. Welcome, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. So I had a really great little surprise. Steve LTT calls himself on YouTube. Yeah, him and his two sons just stopped by the house and had a coffee about 20 minutes ago. And I've spoken to the man before, but it was really great to meet him face to face.
That's great.
Yeah.
I've been advocating for people to be getting together with their neighbors for a while, and we were doing the same thing yesterday. I had Thomas Zog, who's in the chat now, Quick Dub, and Edgy D all at my place yesterday.
Oh, nice. Good.
So they all know where to go when shit goes down.
Well, I mean, listen, if you're a Christian, you are commanded to love thy neighbor. That's a commandment. And so it doesn't say love your neighbor if they align with you politically. It doesn't say love thy neighbor if they're nice to you. It just says love thy neighbor. And so that's going to be kind of an element of what we're going to be talking about today. Now, just to let you know how things go for me and how I come up with what we're going to talk about for these sessions every Sunday. I get up a lot of times at 4:30 a.m. and I get by myself and I just pray and seek God and ask him to give me his mind and what he wants to say to everybody watching this right now, whether you're watching it live or you're watching it in the future sometime. And I just spend a lot of time trying to, getting into his presence and filtering out the world and cares and worries and just getting into God's presence and standing on his promises. And so what I do then, after I've spent, a significant time in prayer, is I just ask him, okay, what do you want? What do you want me to do? I'm your servant. And so I just open my Bible randomly. I don't go in with any preconceived notions. I just open it. Well, 2 mornings in a row, I opened the book and it went to the exact same page. And we're going to be reading from a book today that's only 9 chapters long. And we're going to read a story that covers so many things. This is a deep story. It's entertaining. People love a good story. When The Princess Bride came out, everybody loved it. It had sword fighting. It had kings. It had betrayal. It had love story. It had all the basic elements of a really great story. And this is one of them. And when you open your Bible, you see black and white text, maybe Jesus's words in red. But when you start reading some of these stories, they're fascinating, a lot of them, number one. And you get a picture of what God likes, what he doesn't like, and how to allow him to activate in your situation. Now, a lot of people have asked, and one more thing I want to add about this message coming to me that we're going to be going over today. I called my father-in-law on the third day, and told him what we were going to be doing today. And he said, that exact same topic has come up for me 2 or 3 times this week. And so when I get those little signs along the road, I'm like, okay, God, great. I know what you want. And so I'm going to do my best to present this in such a way that is enjoyable and easy to understand, digestible. I could come on here and make big flowery speeches and say all kinds of words that if it's not easy to understand, you might as well be banging a pot and a pan together. It's just noise. Okay.
I think that's where I'm kind of like the test monkey. If you can get it across to me, you can get it across to me.
That's great. So to start off with, I want to turn to Psalm 9:16, the book of Psalms. That's a big book written by David, King David. And it's songs, it's poetry, it's prophecy. You could go through the book of Psalms for a year and never cover the same topic twice. Now, I would like to title this study for everybody listening. And the title of this study, Derek, if you could write it down, or I'll text you after, so that when it's posted on Total BS or Plaid Army,
Sure.
The authorization for self-defense. Okay.
Oh, I like this one.
The authorization for self-defense. In Ecclesiastes, it tells us to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. There's a time to kill. Now, people have been upset for a very long time because governments have gotten out of control. And, you'll hear people like David Icke or just about any patriot person out there say, look, governments only rule you because you allow them to. Well, he's right, and he's wrong. This story that we're going to cover today is going to get into how a kingdom decided to murder every single citizen within the kingdom of the nation of Israel. Now,
so the Metallica reference is actually a biblical reference?
You talking about Creeping Death?
Time to Kill.
Killing Time, that song?
Is that what it is? I thought there was an actual I remember a t-shirt, A Time to Kill. I don't know if that's if I'm way off.
I don't remember that one. I just played Creeping Death on Rock Friday. Yes, on Friday I got a request for that out of Edmonton here, actually. Metallica and Megadeth are interesting because they have had several overtly biblical themes in their music. Dave Mustaine actually came out as a Christian several years ago, and he put out the album United Abominations. And a lot of the lyrics on that album could have been lifted directly out of the book of Revelation or the book of Daniel, or you know what I mean? So those guys are fully aware. Let's put it that way.
I see in the D-Live chat there, Lucky Strike is saying the Pope just addressed the UN about disarming people. So I don't know if that's in your sermon today, but that's an interesting point.
It's not, but it plays in. The Pope is the Catholic Church likes to play like the Pope is Jesus on earth. Okay. God's representative. But it's a fallacy. It's a lie. And the Catholic Church is going to have its day. In the book of Revelation, it talks about a great whore that sits on a scarlet-colored beast, and she's drunk on the blood of the saints. But it also says that she will be utterly destroyed. It goes on to say that whore is a city that sits on 7 mountains, 7 hills. That's Rome. And all the nations of the earth will see the smoke arising, and in 1 hour, her doom will come. Now, the Catholic Church has killed true Christians many times throughout history. But that's not what this is about. It's a side note. You brought it up, so I thought I would just throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
We're going to read Psalm 9:16. Here we go. The Lord, who is every knee going to bow and tongue confess is Lord? Jesus. When Paul wrote that, if Jesus was not God, he was committing blasphemy, right? Thou shalt not take the Lord thy God's name in vain. Well, what name do people take in vain and use as a swear word? Jesus
Christ.
Right?
God
and
damn.
The same passage says, you will not make any likeness or graven image of the Lord your God. So how is it that we have all these pictures of the Lord Jesus? How is it that we have statues of him? Did somebody have a Polaroid so that Michelangelo could paint a picture of this beautiful young man with flowing hair? I don't know who that is. That is not my God. Now, there are millions of Jesuses and Jesuses in South and Central America alone. So it would behoove us to know the real one, right? And that's what started my journey. I grew up in churches, but I didn't know him. One day, at probably one of the lowest points of my life, I just asked him, who are you? And he revealed himself to me through a series of events that took about a year. And so let's read. The Lord is known by the judgment which he executeth. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. Haggai Selah. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. You ever heard the term building their own gallows?
Yeah.
This story is where that saying comes from. And there's a lot to it. So buckle up, have your Bible ready. And,
all right. Can you just explain what that word means? Higgiayan? Salah? Like, I can't just scroll past that like I know what's going on.
That one I'm going to have to look up because I'm not sure myself. And that's another thing. I'm not going to tell you something that I don't know. I will never make things up, and I will never try to explain something that I'm unsure of. So the best answer I can give is I don't know.
Okay.
Now, right before the book of Psalms, you've got Job and Esther. So if you can back up the book of Esther. And we're just going to go through this today. And there's principles here that we can pick up and use today. Now, this is, like I said.
Sorry. The book of Esther, whereabouts is that?
Esther. So we were just in Psalms.
Yeah.
If you back up from there, there's Job.
Yep.
And Esther.
Is there?
I think the book of Ruth might be in there too. Nope, Job and Esther. So right before Psalms is Job, and then the book of Esther.
Man. Esther got ripped. It's only got like 3 pages here.
Oh, there's so much. It's like I said, it's only 9 chapters, but there's so much here that you could learn from, that you could actually apply to your life. And it's very similar in a lot of ways. People look at 2020 and think this is the worst thing that's ever happened. No, it's not. It's not. Now, it could get very bad. It says in the end times that the devil or the beast will be given power to make war against the saints and prevail. But if you persevere to the end, then you win, even if you're killed for your faith, which many people have been. Remember, we covered that in Hebrews a while back, Derek, that some of you will be killed for your faith. But that's not the worst thing that can happen. The worst thing that can happen is that you live a very nice, comfortable life, and at the end of it, you go to the judgment, and Jesus says, I don't know you. That's the worst thing that can happen. So, chapter 1, Book of Esther. Now, this takes place during Israel's captivity under the Medes and the Persians. The Medo-Persian Empire. Persia's Iran. Okay? Iran was a great empire stretching from India to Ethiopia. They ruled the known world at the time. Now, Israel was disobedient, did everything to make God angry, walked away, worshiped other gods, and God delivered them up into captivity every single time. And the whole Torah is full of these examples. So they would mess up and they would get kicked around until they repented and turned back to God. And then he would restore them to where they were supposed to be every single time. And it's no different today. People talk about a great awakening that's happening. You're not going to have one without this. Okay? And, you know, we talk about what's happening in China. We talk about what's happening with the New World Order or the Illuminati or whatever you want to call it. There was times when they were in bondage for 70 years. And it's only covered by one chapter of a book in Judges. So some of these things happen over large periods of time. But as you'll see from this story, God is working in the background and setting people up specifically for a time when they have a specific purpose. And today's no different. We just don't know who that is. All right? Now let's start. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. This is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even to Ethiopia, over 107 and 20 provinces. That's a big kingdom. India to the west coast of Africa. That's huge. Large, a lot of people. Well, they owned it. And they were constantly at war with Greece. They were sending troops into Thrace all the time. They and look, God set them up to do that. Okay? They were being used of God to do that in order that his power would be made known. In order that he could show the people, look, this is what you walked away from. And I'm ready to help you anytime. By the way, you'll hear of Xerxes. Somebody's calling me. I'm going to ignore that. Ahasuerus is Greek. His Greek name is Xerxes with an X. So Xerxes the First, if you ever hear that name in history, king of the Medo-Persian Empire, was Ahasuerus, okay? Side note.
All right, I'm just going to step away for 1 second, but I'm still listening there, Mike.
Sure, I'll just continue on with everybody here. That in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the palace, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the province being before him. So these people, out of 126 provinces from India to Africa, came to his castle and he was throwing a party. It was a big feast to show the glory of Persia and the empire. when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. That's a long party. It wasn't just one night. Right? It's a big deal going on. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan, the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. So everybody in Shushan was invited to this one. Nice guy, right? Poor were eating. They were allowed to go to the palace. It says everybody. Where were white, green, and blue hangings fastened with cords of fine linen, and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black marble, and they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance. So he was allowing the people, small and great, to drink from gold. And I'm getting an echo.
Oh, sorry, that's my fault.
Okay. Are we good?
Sorry. Yeah, you're right in the middle of biblical kegger.
Okay, there we go. And the drinking was according to the law. None did compel, for so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure. So just come as you are. You want to drink and get stupid? Go ahead. You don't want to? Fine. So this is what the king did. Xerxes the first, Ahasuerus. Also Vashti, the queen, made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to King Ahasuerus. Now on the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he was drunk, he was having a good time, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king and the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look upon. So the king wanted to show off his wife, the queen. I got the hottest wife in the land. I'm rich. Look, I'm giving you all the best wine. I'm serving it in gold goblets. We're rich. We got the most powerful army. We run the planet. And not only that, but the queen is hot. That's what he was saying. Vashti didn't like that. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth. His anger burned in him. She just showed him up in front of everybody. He commanded that the queen be brought out, and she said, I'm not doing it. Bad move. Then the king said to the wise men, what were you going to say?
I said she was in a mood. She's not coming out.
Yeah, she locked herself in the bathroom. Then the king said to the wise men which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment. The next unto him was Karshina, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face, and which sat the first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to the law? Because she hath not performed the commandment of the king, Ahasuerus, by the chamberlains. Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes, to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes, when it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought before him, but she came not. So look, when word gets out that the queen is not obeying the king, all the women in the kingdom are going to start disobeying their husbands. We can't have this.
No.
They didn't like that.
Huh. This is like Oprah, eh? When you leave your women at home listening to Oprah, she's going to fill their heads with bad ideas.
Yeah, we can't have the women folk getting uppity, is what they said.
It's kind of like, I guess that's going to happen at some point, isn't it? Trump's going to say something and Oprah's going to cross him, and that's going to be this whole thing playing out in the election.
That's one way I guess you could apply it. So let's go on. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes which have heard of the deed of the queen, thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the law of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered. Remember that. The law of the Medes and the Persians cannot be altered. It was the same thing in the book of Daniel. Daniel was loved of the king. And a bunch of the king's advisors tricked him into making a law that Daniel would be killed. That's where you get the story of Daniel in the lion's den. And the king stayed up all night laboring to find a legal way to change that law, and he couldn't. So once a law was made in the Medo-Persian Empire, even the king couldn't change it. That's going to come up later on in this story too. So the laws of the Medes and the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. Time for a new queen. Vashti just lost everything. When the king's decree, which he shall make, shall be published throughout his empire, for it is great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both great and small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. All right. So they went with it. For he sent letters unto all the king's provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, that it should be published according to the language of every people. The king just made it a law that the man is in charge of his household. That's law.
Every man is the king of his castle.
That's right. After these things, when the wrath of King Ahasuerus was appeased, and remember, this took place over a period of time. It wasn't all in one day. Okay? Remember that feast was 180 days. And that was with all the princes. And then he had the commoners come in. And that lasted 7 days. And then they all got together after the king was sober and with his advisors and made this law, because his advisors told him, this can't stand, that Queen Vashti can just openly defy you in front of everybody. Now, a lot of you guys are saying, I like that law. A lot of you women are saying,
I hate this book.
Yeah. All right, let's go on. After these, then the king's servants that ministered unto him, the king's servants that ministered unto him, Let there be fair young virgins sought for the king. And let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom, that they may gather together all the fair young virgins unto Shushan the palace, the house of the women, under the custody of Hag, the king's chamberlain, keeper of the women. And let their things for purification be given them. And let the maiden which pleaseth the king be queen instead of Vashti. And the thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now in Shushan the palace there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. So he's of the tribe of Benjamin. And
I didn't realize that was a word, a Benjamite.
Yep. Who had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captivity, which had been carried away with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. Interestingly enough, Saddam Hussein thought that he was going to be the next Nebuchadnezzar. He was going to set up the Babylonian Empire, was his thought. And he had the likeness of Nebuchadnezzar put on the royal seal all over Iraq. I'm just going to grab a drink of water, okay?
Yeah, no
Give me
problem.
1 second. I'll be right back. I'm just going to grab some water, and we're going to come right back to this. So there's this Jew, Mordecai, who was carried away under the reign of Babylon. Medes and the Persians conquered Babylon, and now they are in charge over everybody, not just the Jews, right? The known world. I'm going to grab a glass of water. Give me a second. I'll be right back.
I'm learning new words here myself, folks. Benjamite. Should use that more often, that "ite" sort of thing. Maybe we can call Mike's Parish Americanites. I think that's a good idea. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on DLive and also on both YouTube channels that we're streaming on tonight. Or this morning. I'm used to saying tonight. I will be doing a stream tonight, 7:30, Plaid Army, as usual. We've been holding that slot for I don't know how long, so almost a year now I think we've been doing that. So sorry for everybody joining us on DLive. It wasn't going to be one of those kind of streams. You guys should be used to us doing this by now. I think it's our third week where we've been streaming church. I was doing this 2 months prior to that with Mike. And yeah, hopefully all of you guys, I left the links down below if you want to go over and subscribe to the Total BS Biblical Study YouTube channel. That name is in a workshop right now, I think. But we'll get it set up for next week. We'll get this link out early. Maybe by Wednesday we could send a link out so everybody will know when to join us, because right now we're a little bit unorganized, but things are growing, you know.
It doesn't belong to us anyway.
Yeah. We'll just see how she goes.
We can take comfort in that. So we're introducing to the story this Jew named Mordecai. Morty. There you go. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther. Enter this girl, a Jewess, Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, so she was an orphan. And her uncle, Mordecai, is raising her in Shushan under King Xerxes I, or Ahasuerus. And she was a beautiful young lady. And the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter. So it came to pass, when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and many maidens were gathered together into Shushan, the palace, to the custody of Haggai, that Esther was brought also unto the king's house, to the custody of Haggai, keeper of the women. And the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him. And he speedily gave her things for purification, which with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens which were meet to be given her out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of women. So this guy that was in charge of the house of women, in those days, kings they would have a harem. They would have concubines that were just strictly for sex. But they would have a queen, which was set aside. And the purification process that these ladies went through, under the direction of this man, Haggai, who was the head over this, he kind of watched the king's women, right? He was in charge of this house. He took a shining to this girl, Esther. He was kind to her. He gave her a little entourage of 7 girls that were to look after her every need. Now, before this, she was just another citizen of Shushan. All right? And let's go on. Where are we? Esther had not shown her people nor her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it. So nobody knows that she's a Jew. Nobody knows because she didn't say it. Never said what her lineage was. Never said that she was a Benjamite. Just her uncle Mordecai said, keep it to yourself. Now, this is going to be significant later on, so don't forget that, okay? It's going to come to play here. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her. So he was checking in on her. And Mordecai, by the way, was somebody important. It says that he sat in the gate. Usually if you sat in the gate, you were a judge or somebody fairly important in society. You see that over and over again in the Bible, where cities had walls, they had a gate, and you had judges and people that sat in the gate and debated legal issues with each other and kind of vetted who came in the city, right?
Okay.
You didn't just walk into a city. Some cities had certain keywords that if you tried to gain entrance to the city and you didn't know the keyword, you were put to death. That's another thing that used to happen. So, interesting stuff, right?
It is. Because I always relate these things to the different stories. Like Game of Thrones, when Daenerys came up to that one palace, they had about 13 people that came up to greet her at there and all had to vet her before she made it in.
That's where they get just about, the more you get into this, so many things in pop culture are ripped off from the Bible or patterned after it. A lot. Yeah. Now, when every maid's turn was come to go into King Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months, listen to this, 12 months, according to the manner of women, so were the days of their purification accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh oil. Remember, the wise men brought Jesus gold, frankincense, and myrrh, right? They didn't have drugs back then. They didn't have prescriptions. They used compounds of herbs with active constituents that drugs are actually synthesized from. Interesting side note. So 6 months of purification with myrrh and 6 months with sweet odors and with other things for the purification of women. So for a full year, what that went by, Esther was treated with antibiotics, disinfectants, and sweet-smelling oils. So she was clean and smelled like a field full of flowers, like just the beautiful, perfect woman for the king. And it was a process that took a full year.
Jesus. Can you imagine how much that would cost in a spa today, giving her that treatment? But I guess he's a king.
He's the king. And you know, they figured that's what he deserved. Then thus came every maiden unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house, out of the women unto the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned with the second house of the women to the custody of Shashgaz, interesting name, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. So this guy is in charge of the sex slaves. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. So King Ahasuerus said, that one girl, I really like that one. So he called for her by name. This is going to set her up to be queen. Remember, they don't know she's a Jew.
Right. Okay.
Because her uncle instructed her, don't say nothing about that. And that comes into play later in this story, trust me. When this thing gets going, you're going to love it. Well, in the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who was taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. She must have been really beautiful. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the 10th Tebet, in the 7th year of his reign. This story started in the 3rd year of his reign. We're now in the 7th, so 4 years have gone by in just these few chapters.
Wow.
So 4 years have gone by. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. So now Esther is the queen. She's just been crowned. She was chosen in a 4-year process of gathering up women from India to Ethiopia, and then a year of setting them aside and making sure that they were clean and smelled great.
Wow, this is like the original Pretty Woman story.
Kind of, except that she wasn't a hooker. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast, and he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. So he's celebrating his new queen. People got gifts. They had another big feast, right? And when the virgins were gathered together the second time, then Mordecai sat in the king's gate, right? So there's Mordecai. He's not just some average citizen. Like I said, having a seat in the gate gave position of preeminence in society, right? Not just anybody did that. Esther had not yet shown her kindred nor her people as Mordecai had charged her, for Esther did the commandment of Mordecai like as when she was brought up with him. So she, as far as Esther was concerned, Mordecai was her dad. She did what he told her to do, and she still has not revealed that she is a Jew. Now, in those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, 2 of the king's chamberlains, Bigtan and Teresh, of those which kept the door, were wroth and sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. They were going to assassinate the king, these 2 men. And the thing was known to Mordecai, who told it unto Esther the queen. And Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And when inquisition was made of the matter, it was found out. Therefore, they were both hanged on a tree. And it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. So 2 guys were going to assassinate the king. Mordecai found out about it and tipped off the queen, who tipped off the right people and saved the life of the king. Now, I want you to consider something here. If the Jews were under captivity, you'd think it would have been favorable that this king would be assassinated, right? But no, it wasn't. Mordecai warned the king. He was loyal, even to this king that had them under subjugation. In basically slavery. I mean, he had a pretty good life, but they were always looking for a way to go back to Israel. Always looking for a way to get out of bondage. But Mordecai the Jew was loyal to the king. Now, this is important because it's going to come up later on. So I want you to remember that. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman. All right. Haman. Now, this guy is going to come into the picture. The son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. Now, it says here that Haman was an Agagite. What's an Agagite? You're probably wondering. I've never heard that word before. Agag was the king of the Amalekites, who were always at war with Israel. The Amalekites were a constant problem for Israel. They ruled Israel in the days of, do you remember when we went through that story of Gideon versus the Midianites?
Yep.
And the Midianites were part Amalekite and a couple other different people that came and took all their stuff. Every single year, took all their food, took their everything. And Saul was made king over Israel after the reign of the judges because there was no king in Israel, and everybody just did what was right in their own eyes those days. And the people cried out for a king. Samuel, the prophet, was judge over Israel, gave them Saul. Saul went to battle against the Amalekites, who had the king Agag. Saul was instructed to kill every last one of them, man, woman, and child, right down to the livestock. You let nothing live. And so Saul came along after the battle. Samuel did. And Saul had allowed King Agag to live. And he kept the best of their cattle and livestock as a sacrifice unto God. Well, he had disobeyed. And for that reason, God took the throne away from him and gave it to King David many years later. This Agag, King Agag of the Amalekites, when he figured out what was going on, it says he came to Samuel delicately. He came to him delicately, and he said, surely the bitterness of past is gone from us now, right? Like, I know we were at war and we tried to kill every last one of you and stole from you, but we can forget about that now, right? Hey, buddy? And Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be. And it says he hewed Agag in pieces. Cut him into little pieces in front of everybody, this king, Agag. So that's who this guy that has just been introduced to the story. Haman is a descendant of Agag, who is a traditional genetic enemy of Israel or the Jews. Now, he's just been put in charge, second in command. This is important to the story. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. So the king ordered that everybody had to bow down whenever Haman walked by. Mordecai wouldn't do it. Do you know why? Because Mordecai was a Jew. And it was ordered that you bowed to Haman because it was a form of God worship. This is a God man. And he was an Agagite. And Haman and Mordecai would not bow before a man, especially an Agagite. Then the king's servants that were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Hey, Mordecai, how come you're doing this? This isn't like you. Now it came to pass when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand. For he told them that he was a Jew. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. They told him, they entreated Mordecai, how come you're not doing this? And then they talked about it, and they brought it before Haman. So there's this guy over here, this Jew, will not bow down every time you go by on your horse, or every time you walk in and out of the gate. And he saw, and he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. So Mordecai has just made a very dangerous enemy. This man is second in line after the king. And because he's so angry at Mordecai, he says, I'm going to wipe out your entire bloodline, man, woman, and child. The first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus. Now, the story started in the 3rd year of his reign. Then it jumped to the 7th. Now we're at the 12th. 9 years has just transpired in what we're talking about here. They cast pure, that is the lot before Haman, from day to day. And from month to month to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. They were big on astrology. Incidentally, this story is about the celebration of Purim, which the Jews celebrate today because of what happens in this story. The cookies called Haman's ears. And I've heard people say that's because they're so evil. Well, he was going to kill every single one of them. What would you do? But let's go on. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore, it is not good for the king's profit to suffer them. And when he says to suffer them, he means put up with them. There's a certain people, I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they're going to be a problem for you because they don't obey you. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I'll pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those who have the charge of the business to bring it into the king's treasuries. I'll pay big bucks for this to happen. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. He just gave him his royal ring. That meant that he could make orders as though it was the king himself. He was just given ultimate authority, even more than he had before. Now, this king, I would have thought to ask Haman, who is it? But he didn't do that. The king said unto Haman, the silver's yours, the people also to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. So yeah, whatever you want, Haman. Whatever you say, buddy, you're gold in my books. I trust you. See, now, Haman was doing it because of a personal slight. Because this one man wouldn't bow down before him. I'm going to kill all of them from India to Ethiopia. But he made it to the king as though, I've identified something that's going to be a problem for you. It's not because I'm personally been slighted or bent out of shape. No. He put it across to the king as though he was doing him a favor in running his business. Furthest thing from the truth. The king didn't even ask. He just said, do it up. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, in the name of King Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. The letters were sent by posts into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month before Adar, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for prey. So this is in the future. They didn't just make the law and do it same day. It's in the month of Adar. This is going to happen. In one day, we're going to go around and every single one of them is going to be killed. And we're going to take, if you kill them, you can take all their stuff. It's yours. Your spoil, right?
Is this why I often hear rabbis say that it is in the descendants of Amalekites' DNA to destroy the children of Jacob? Like I'm often hearing, is this kind of pertain to that? Like,
yes.
Okay.
Yes, but we're under a different situation today.
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
but often you hear, like, what the research that I've been doing, you hear them saying these things and referring to these texts and trying to make sense of them today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what they're referring to. And not just this, but it's a recurring theme all throughout the Torah. Like I said, in the reign of the judges, the Amalekites were constantly a problem for the Jews. And when the Jews were disobedient to God, he would just walk away and let them be taken over and killed. So, but today, bloodlines are not such a big deal. The Bible says no flesh will glory in his presence. There is neither free nor bond. There is neither Jew nor Greek, but all are in Christ Jesus, okay? So today is different. We're not going to go hunting Amalekites. Amalekites can repent and be baptized in the name of Jesus and get into heaven just like anybody else. All right? The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given in Shushan the palace, and the king and Haman sat down to drink. But the city Shushan was perplexed. All of a sudden, there's this order that we're going to kill every single Jew in the kingdom. What the heck?
Yeah, it's a little extreme there.
A little harsh. Now, when Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai he tore his clothes. He put on sackcloth with ashes and went out into the midst of the day and cried with a loud and bitter cry. That's what they would do when they were in mourning or somebody died. They would cry and dirty themselves and get low, right? In sackcloth and ashes. That was a thing amongst the Jews. And came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting, and weeping, and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth of ashes. Now, can you imagine that you just found out that a law has been made that in about 6 months or so, you, your daughter, your father, your aunts, your uncles are all going to be killed by the sword?
Yeah, I
You
can
just
kinda
got
picture
that news. And you know that there's no way around this because, like we mentioned earlier, the law of the Medes and the Persians cannot be altered. That law cannot be changed. And it's not going to be in this story. But we'll get to that in a bit here. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, to take away his sackcloth for him, but he received it not. He would not be comforted. She's, the queen is like, I'm going to send you some nice clothes. You shouldn't be wriggling around in the dirt like you are, looking like a beggar. He wouldn't take it. He would not be comforted. He would not receive any kind of a gift because he was facing the imminent destruction of his people. So I think anybody would be pretty upset about that. Then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So Hatak went forth to Mordecai onto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. Also, he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it to Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him and for her people. They still don't know, Haman doesn't know, that one of the people that he just ordered killed is the queen. Remember, nobody knows that she's a Jew. She didn't tell anybody because her uncle, who raised her, told her not to.
I'd forgotten about that myself.
Right? Yeah. See, like I said, this is all going to come around. And she didn't even know about this law. She had to be told through a messenger from her uncle. Like, why would the king go and discuss new laws or wars that he was fighting with the king? Right? Or the queen, I mean. They didn't do that. So she had to be told. And, Haman or Mordecai wants her to go to the king and say a word in their behalf, right? And Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again, Esther spake unto Hatak and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. So Esther says, I can't just walk into the king's chambers or I could be killed. Unless he extends the golden scepter and you touch it, that means you've obtained favor and you're not going to die just for walking into his inner chamber. That was the law.
Weirdo.
Oh, laws are just as weird today, trust me. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. They went and told Mordecai, well, she can't just go walking in there or she could die. Right? Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place, but thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So he says, look, the Jews will live, but a lot of them are going to be killed, and probably you too. So don't think that you're going to skate on this, honey. Basically, you're going to die either way. And he says, who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? He's saying, this could be why you're the queen right now. that God has sent you for this purpose. Maybe you're not supposed to just sit smelling nice on fine pillows with your little buddies eating grapes all day. Right? That's me. But that's what I'm getting out of what Mordecai is saying here. Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. And I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to law, and if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went on his way, and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. So she says, you guys all get together, and you fast and pray for 3 days.
Oy vey. If she just told the truth, she could have saved millions of people. Or
The
thousands.
law can't be altered. If she told the truth, then she would be just as on the line as the rest of them.
But he might not have made the law knowing in the first place that she was a Jew.
Well, it gets better. Just wait.
Right? Like, okay.
Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house, and the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. The king held out to Esther the golden scepter. It was in his hand, so Esther drew near, touched the top of the scepter. So he just decided she gets to live. Then said the king unto her, what wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to half the kingdom. Now, these kings often got themselves in a lot of trouble by talking big and being braggadocious.
Mm-hmm.
I shall give you up to half my kingdom, Queen Esther. We've seen them get in other books where you're going to see them actually get into real binds over that. Herod was tricked into cutting the head off of John the Baptist because a sexy little girl came in and danced for them, him and his buddies, and he was feeling like he was bragging about how powerful he was, and he said, I'll give you anything you want up to half my kingdom. She went back to her mom, and her mom said, tell him we want the head of John the Baptist on a platter. And Herod didn't want to do it, but he had to because all of his buddies heard him say it. The obligation trap.
Careful what you wish for.
Careful what you promise, right? And where are we? And Esther answered, if it seemed good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. The king said, cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said to Esther at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to half the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, my petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and they will do tomorrow as the king hath said. Now, Haman was a really proud, high on himself guy. And we're going to see how that plays into this and how it ultimately gives him the greatest humiliation of his entire life. And that's where this is going. Then went Haman forth that day, joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. He's got everything. He's second in command over the whole kingdom. He's just ordered the deaths of his enemies, and he's just been invited to a banquet by the queen herself with just him and the king, but he's still it just burns his shorts that this Jew still won't stand up or bow when he walks by. He can't deal with it. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself. he refrained himself from going over there and killing him on the spot, which he could have done. He could have just gone over there and run him through with a sword any time. And when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh, his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children and all the things wherein the king had promoted him and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. So he's bragging. Now, his wife and all of his friends already knew how much money he had. They knew how many children he had. They knew that he was second in command under the king. He just had to remind them. You ever known somebody like that?
Yep.
I know you have. Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself. Just me. That's how important I am, everybody. Tomorrow I am invited unto her also with the king. And then this is funny. He goes on, yet all this availeth me nothing so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting in the king's gate. I can never have enough as long as that guy is alive. Then said Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high. And tomorrow speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou merrily with the king unto the banquet. The king pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. Now, 50 cubits high of gallows, that's 75 feet. 75-foot high gallows. He wants to hang Mordecai on. Is that really necessary? No. But he wanted to hang him real good. Right? For everybody to see. And so he's going to this feast, this banquet that Esther is preparing, and he's going to go in, and these gallows are being built for Mordecai, and he's going to suggest that we do in this guy on this 75-foot gallows.
I mean, that would draw some attention, wouldn't it? I'd want to go to that feast.
It would make an example, that's for sure. Now, this is the night before, okay? Remember, they've all been praying and fasting and requesting to God to help them for 3 days.
So they're a little testy there.
Changed. So it's going to be nothing short of a miracle if it doesn't happen. Now, this is the night before. On that night, could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the books of records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigtana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on Ahasuerus. Right? Remember? Mordecai warned the queen that there was an assassination plot against Ahasuerus. And he's just reading this the night before that Haman's going to come in and suggest that we hang this guy 75 feet in the air. And the king said, what honor and dignity have been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered to him, there's nothing done for him. Like, did we award him for this? Did he get a reward for saving the king's life, my life? Saving me from an assassination attempt by my own inner circle of chamberlains? And they said, no, he didn't get anything for that, and he didn't even ask for it. Dun, dun, dun. Plot thickens. The king said, who's in the court? Now Haman was coming to the outward of the court of the king's house to speak to the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows he had prepared for him. So he's just on his way in. Now the king's thinking he's going to reward Mordecai. Haman's on his way in to talk to the king about killing him. Quite the setup going on. The king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. Now, this is funny, okay? This is really funny. God's got a sense of humor. So Haman came in. The king said to him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now, Haman thought in his heart, to whom the king delight to do honor more than myself. Right? So he's thinking that he's going to give the king advice on how to honor him. So he's going to think of the best thing he could think of that could happen to a man, right?
Okay.
Let the royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal, which is set upon his head, and let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback to the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Because he thinks it's him.
Oh,
Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse, and as thou hast said, even do so to Mordecai the Jew that sitteth in the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. He's just set up his mortal enemy, the guy that he hates, the guy that the whole reason why he can't be happy for anything. Now he's got to go and give him the king's royal clothing and horse, put a crown on his head, lead him around the city by a horse, and proclaim that this man is the king's delight and is honored among men. And he did it himself. But that's not the end for old Haman. Then took Haman. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate. But Haman hastened to his house mourning and covering his head in ashes. And he did that. He arrayed Mordecai, brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Oh, talk about a kick to the nuts of this guy's pride. Right? He was just bragging to all of his friends about how he could have anybody killed, and I've got everything in the world. This guy won't bow before me. He just had to lead him through the streets and proclaim his honor and glory to all the people.
It feels like a hidden camera episode.
Isn't it weird? Yeah, this is quite the story. And Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had befallen them, or him. Then saith his wise men and Zeresh, his wife, unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shall surely fall before him. All of a sudden, all the glad-handing, back-patting, well-wisher suck-ups that hung out with this guy and put up with his, I'm rich, bitch, and I got sons. I'm second in line to the king. All of a sudden, they're saying, "You're screwed, man." It gets worse. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hasted to bring Haman into the banquet that Esther had prepared. So the king and Haman came to banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said unto Esther on the second day of the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? Remember, he promised her up to half his kingdom. And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed even to half the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. So, look, if we were just going to be sold into slavery, that'd be one thing. But no, we're all going to be killed. And this is the time now that Haman and the king have been just made aware that she's a Jew. Haman had no idea what he was doing. Remember that verse we read? They have built their own gallows by their own hand.
Huh. So
then King Ahasuerus, Then King Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he? Where is he that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. And then Haman was afraid before the king and queen. Ruh-roh. For the first time, this braggadocious big mouth, now he's scared. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden, and Haman stood up to make request for his life. He was going to beg for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed where Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in his house? As the words went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. Now, that means you're dead. They put a hood over him. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. He was just forced to lead this man through the streets and give him honor. And then he was hung on the gallows that were 75 feet high that he had prepared for him. It all turned around on him. And he didn't have to. He could have just walked by Mordecai every day and said, whatever. Nope. He already had everything. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. 1 second.
Sure.
I'll be right back. So just hang on right there. So Haman has now been killed by his own gallows, and it gets better. We're going to get into this authorization to defend your life. All right?
Well, see, I'm supposed to actually go look at a trailer at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, but I just messaged him saying I'll be there at 1:30 just because I was getting into this story so much. I'll have to, okay, they just said it's no problem, so I got another little while here. Thanks everybody again for joining us. If you wanted to donate to Mike's work, there is a PayPal link down below. You can also visit them, as you can see down below here as well, plaidarmy.com, mojo50, and americanuckradio.com. I see Steve LT is here. I heard you and Americanuck there, Mike, met today and had a coffee. It's good getting to know people around you that are like-minded. As you can see, the attitude and behavior of our current government in the censorship of talking online, that's going to come in all forms of dissent, anything that they deem to be right-wing, far right-wing propaganda, whatever. I mean, even just the reading of the Bible, they could censor, technically. I mean, could this not be deemed anti-Semitic, what we're talking about? So it's good to get and meet each other in person. I was just mentioning how you and Steve were meeting in person, and it's a good idea for everybody to go around meeting each other, as opposed to just trying to hang out here online, because the dissenters are going to be canceled.
You know how you get a feeling about somebody when you first meet them?
Yeah.
My gut just tells me that Steve is a great guy, and I don't just let anybody in my house that I haven't met face to face. But I'm glad that I did with Steve, and he's welcome here anytime. If you're listening, Steve, you want to come by for a coffee or whatever, shoot me a text.
Yeah, he seems like he doesn't mean anybody any harm. You know what I mean? He's just out for the truth.
He's got a good vibe about him. I will say that.
Yeah.
And his kids are happy and well fed, and you can tell a lot about a man from his kids.
Yeah, for sure.
And Steve's got a couple of really great sons. They're smart. They're happy. They're healthy. Let's go on.
I was just gonna say there. I was supposed to look at a trailer at 1 o'clock, but I just moved it off to 1:30. So.
Okay, we've got 2 chapters left, and we're done. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I got another thing to do at 11 here. So on that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. Mordecai came before the king, for Esther was told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So now Mordecai is in the place that Haman was in with the king's ring and able to write letters or make laws as though he was speaking on behalf of the king. Talk about your ultimate all-time reversal, right?
Yeah, that would suck, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, Haman's not aware of it anymore. He's swinging 75 feet in the air. As Esther spake yet again before the king and fell down at his feet and besought him with Haman the Agagite and his device that he had devised against the Jews. And the king held out the golden scepter towards Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king and said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews, which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil which shall come to my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Now listen to this. Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed under the king's ring may no man's reverse. Then, so Mordecai has ultimate authority now, but that first law can't be changed, right? Still in the month of Adar, they're all supposed to be killed. That law stands. Can't be changed. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month Sivan, the 3 and 20th day thereof, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, the deputies and rulers of the provinces, which are from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by posts on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews that which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of their prey upon one day in all the province of King Ahasuerus, namely on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. Now, I'm going to stop here because, so look, the law that they were supposed to be killed was still going to go out. But they made another law that if a man comes to kill you under this law, you can kill him. Now, why is this important right now? Did they just get together and get swords together and decide it on their own? No. How many guns are there in the United States of America? I've heard 10 for every man, woman, and child. And people constantly say, we're armed. We got all these laws are being made. We got this gun ban coming up in Canada. What do? You gonna go down to the RCMP station and kill some girl that's sitting in the front room there? What's that gonna do? No. You pray, you ask God for the permission to defend your life, and he will grant it. Or he'll just take care of it. That's the access that you have. That's the power that you have. Maybe you will be killed. Maybe not. And if you are, that's not the worst thing that can happen. Now, if somebody does kill me because I'm a Christian, I'll see you at the judgment. What did they do? They prayed and fasted for 3 days. Has anybody picked up that tool? Have we used that weapon? Or do we send little folded hands emojis to each other and say thoughts and prayers just like the Democrats or the liberals do? That's the point of this whole story. God is the same today as he was then. Now, Derek, you have a trailer to go look at. We've already gone an hour and a half. I'm going to say a quick prayer. If any of you watching this want to support the work I'm doing, I have decided on the commandment of God to give a tenth of what you have. I am putting a tenth of whatever I make into a separate bank account that's going to go to whoever he brings me as far as a fatherless or a widow. And if you want to help me keep my internet bill paid so I can keep bringing you the word of God like this, you can go to americanhawkradio.com and hit the donate button. If you don't, then don't. Do whatever you want. You want to keep this going and help me out? Fine. If you don't, keep showing up and hearing the word of God. But I foresee a day when I'm doing this full time and it's getting more and more all the time. Let's put it that way. So if you appreciate it and you want to put a value on it, thank you. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, thank you for this time. Thank you for your word. Thank you for all the very powerful weapons you have made available to us. And Lord, I pray for an awakening. I pray that you would open hearts, minds, eyes, and ears. That we would not depend solely on ourselves, but that we would tap into the true power over kingdoms and kings and presidents and prime ministers and czars and ministers of any kind. I pray that you'd make your power known this day, just like you did back then. Things have changed for us, but you have not. I pray, oh Lord, that you would bring souls, that there would be people that want to make things right before you come and before we stand in judgment, for it is appointed to all men to die. In Jesus' name, amen. Derek, thank you so much for your time. Everybody listening, I haven't been looking at the chat because I'm pretty focused on what I'm reading and talking about. And so thank you for watching. Please share this with your friends and family. And pray. Don't send little prayer emojis to people. Don't say, yeah, my thoughts and prayers. No, actually get by yourself somewhere where nobody can hear you, only God, and tell him what you want. Ask and it shall be given. You want salvation? You'll have it. You want righteousness? You'll have it. You want freedom? Ask the one that grants it. Look what he did for those guys. And I'll leave it at that. Derek, is there anything you want to leave with?
No. I'll see everybody tonight on the Plaid Army channel on DLive. Everybody check the links down below and join us tonight at 7:30. And I'm just going to poke fun at a few of our own politicians and the whole situation. So, yeah, I'm going to go look at a trailer now.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Derek, take care. Do what you do. And I'll keep in touch.
All right. Take care.
See ya.
And I will, I'll play us out on a song, I suppose.
Sure.
That same one you wanted.
It's a great song.
Yeah. We'll get to hear a little more of it then. Bye, everybody.
God has told us Jesus is coming soon. People tired of starvation.